I'm here with Professor Heather Butts, and we're here to talk about health for youths.
So Health for Youth is a nonprofit. It's 12 years old. And what we do is we work with underserved youth throughout the 5 boroughs, as well as Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And we help those students to transition from high school to college, college to the working world. We work with about 4,000 students a year, and we help them mainly around life skill training, but also we do a lot of programs around community gardening. We do robotics, we do life skill training, so a wide array of programs, and we support other nonprofits. So we are a service provider for other youth nonprofits, and we work with about 78 youth nonprofits throughout the city. So the garden, we have several gardens throughout the city. Our main focus is Staten Island, and we have a garden located at the Skyline Playground. So it's called the Health for Youth Skyline Community Garden. But we also do a lot of gardening within New York Restoration Projects Garden. It's an organization run by Bette Midler. And we also have some gardening that we do in the New York Police Precincts and various other parks throughout Staten Island and the 5 boroughs.
Do you get a lot of volunteers and a lot of individuals who help out?
We do, actually. We have a lot of people who participate, a lot of people who get involved in the gardens. It's super fabulous and exciting. And we get a lot of youth that participate and youth with other organizations. So that's actually really gratifying. And everybody that participates in our gardens can take home what they, harvest and share it with their families and friends. Some unusual things every once in a while. Bok choy, I don't know how unusual that is, but a lot of people don't know what to do with it. We also like to do some interesting things with things that you normally eat parts of, like broccoli leaves. A lot of people don't really do much with the leaves, but we like to show you how to do interesting things with them. But your standard fare, asparagus has been doing well. We planted it several years ago, and asparagus is perennial. It comes back every year. So we've been getting some good asparagus this year. But tomatoes, broccoli, squash, the usual. I mean, I'd like to think that people participate in the garden because they're environmentally aware, but I think sometimes people become more environmentally aware because they participate in the garden, which is great, and it's fine, and that's what we love. So if people are curious and then being part of the garden helps them to be more curious, then that's great. Otherwise, if not, then we like to help people with what they're interested in.
How do you convince people to participate in these type of events?
We get a lot of people that come to us, actually, which is great. I mean, back maybe 10 years ago, there was a lot more, I like the word you use, convincing.
It's always convincing.
Right. There used to be more of the convincing. Now, I mean, especially in the era of COVID, where, people have legitimate food security issues. So trying to get people out into a garden where they can take home whatever they harvest is not, it's not a heavy lift. It's not a big sell. And, also it's a way, especially in the height of COVID, it was a way for people to be able to be active and be outdoors, and a way to do that you couldn't do pretty much anywhere else. So we were sort of a safe haven for people to be able to do that kind of outdoor activity. And that has translated over in the, kind of quasi post-COVID or heading into hopefully post-COVID era, where people really got into it. It was one of the few things they could do, and they wanted to keep doing it. So now there's very little convincing. We have a lot of people that are interested. We work a lot with the Cub Scouts, and they come out to the garden every week. We have a compost bin at the Skyline Garden that people can utilize. It's a public bin. So if you have things you want to compost, you can drop it off every Saturday morning between 10 and 11. And so we've got some good traction from that. But a lot of people will approach us and ask about projects that we're doing, and they really get into it. So that's very gratifying.
Do you think COVID, in a weird way, has sort of like put a lens on projects like what you're doing here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also, it's put a big focus on, I say this a lot, but how people entered COVID is how they're experiencing COVID. And if, you had food security issues before COVID, they're not getting better. Same with a lot of other issues. So it has been able to shine a light on the issues that people had and are having during COVID.
Is there anything that any ways that government or business or even like the nonprofits that they could also continue to help in making sure that these programs and all of these issues that we are just talking about still have that light on it?
I think it's multifaceted. I mean, I think people need to talk about it. They need to do projects like this. They need to get the word out. But mainly just shine a light on some of the issues people are having, not in a stigmatizing way, but just this is what people are going through. We need to focus on it.
Like, is there any like tips that you would give to somebody? Like, let's say if like somebody actually wanted to start like a community garden.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, I can tell you what I did. So I always wanted to start a community garden. You know, I kind of feel like a community garden is one of those things that long after I'm gone, it will still exist. And because our community garden is the H.E.A.L.T.H Skyline Community Garden, I like to think that its namesake will go on and it will live on. So the first thing about a community garden really is to figure out if there's a need for it. I know for us, our community garden was an old bocce court that we converted into a community garden. So the bocce court itself wasn't really being used. We watched it for a while to make sure it wasn't being used because I, didn't want a bunch of bocce enthusiasts to we scouted it out for a while, asked the neighbors. No, in fact, there was not a road bocce game at midnight or 3 o'clock. So then you figure you have a resource there, but it's not being used. Can it be used for something else? And then we noticed that there seemed to be a food security need in the area where our garden is. There's not a ton of places where you can get fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of bodegas where you can get chips and Takis and pretzels. But in terms of fresh fruits and vegetables, not so much. So we saw an underutilized resource, the actual bocce court. We saw a need, a lot of corner stores and bodegas in the area that are well-meaning but didn't have a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And then we talked to people in the neighborhood themselves and said, is this something you would utilize? Yes, it's absolutely something we would utilize. That was sort of the third part of it, with the fourth part being something that young people could take care of. And we got a lot of feedback from people saying, if you had something like this, I would love to have my grandchild, niece, nephew, cousin help you out because they need something to do with their time. They're kind of at loose ends. So those are sort of like the four questions we asked ourselves, and those all checked off. Once that was the case, we reached out to the Parks Department because we knew that the garden was on Parks land and basically said, this is an idea we have. We were lucky that we had a really great liaison at Partnerships for Parks who thought it was a great idea. She had also scouted some places out and said she had thought about the bocce court as a possibility. And it took a little while, but eventually we got there. So I think the big question you have to ask yourself is there really a need? If you live somewhere and there's, 18 community gardens within, a half a block radius, well, there might not be a need. You might want one. It might be something cool, but there may not be a need in that area, although there are needs in other places. So is there a need? Are there people that want to do it? Are there people who actually need the produce, either, local pantries or organizations? Do you have the people that can do it? Do you have those things? If the answer is yes to all of those, then you might have the beginnings of the need for a community garden.
One aspect of it is like environmental as well, like
right.
needs for like greenifying places in New York, cleaning up garbage and things like that. How does getting people involved in something like a garden, like how can that maybe like directly or indirectly impact how they may view the environment?
Okay, a good example is beets, right? So you know what a beet looks like in real life, right? But I know what an actual beet from the ground looks like. If you ask a lot of young people who grew up in the city what a beet looks like, they will describe something that looks very much like what you see in a can. Down to like, I think they think the beet is grown with like beet juice around it. Oh, beets, they're the things that are red and they have no skin on them and they swim in this red beet juice. Isn't that how they're grown? That's not how they're grown.
Nope.
Or even better, a better one was remember when Pokemon Go was all the rage and everybody was walking around like zombies trying to like, gotta catch them all? We had students come to our garden doing Pokemon Go, and they would point to this thing and they would say, "What is that?" And I would say, "That is a carrot." And they said, "But where is the carrot? There's just this green leafy thing." So, well, the carrot
Wow.
is a root, so it grows underneath the ground. They'd never seen what a carrot looks like in its natural environment. So that's stunning, right? To think that somebody might not know what a real beet looks like, to think that somebody might not know what a carrot looks like when it's growing. That's really incredible and it's stunning. So then you have to ask yourself, can we do something to help with people understanding about that in the environment? And the answer is yes. And it's getting young people to these gardens, having them participate in them, learning what a carrot looks like in real life, learning how potatoes grow. And that's decently powerful, right? Because when you can do that and when you can really understand where your food comes from and what it looks like naturally, and here's the really key part, that you yourself can be a part of that. And whether that's in a garden, whether or not that's in your home, whether or not you're doing hydroponics and you're growing something without any soil, whether or not you have an herb garden in your home, that's very powerful to be able to think, I can be part of my own food sourcing and it can be healthier than anything I can get anywhere else. That's powerful. So yes, it's a brilliant question. And the answer to that is in a variety of ways, in a myriad of ways, yes.
Like that kind of awareness, like that's obviously like a major boon then, and then that would, I guess, snowball into focusing on like being more environmentally conscious, understanding what's around you, understanding how things are grown.
Gardening is a very low impact, non-threatening activity, right? So a really cool thing about gardening is while you're gardening, with someone, it's amazing where you can get to in terms of having a conversation, discussing something, having an exchange with them. So, in thinking about gardening and why it can be helpful, there's the actual physical act of gardening and getting fruits and vegetables and so forth. And then there's all the other ancillary cool stuff that comes with it, like being able to have a conversation with somebody, while you're pointing out that that's a carrot in a way that you might not be able to do in some other environment. So it's twofold: the actual act of gardening and learning and educating, and then the quiet time that you have around gardening, that can be pretty magical in terms of being able to talk with somebody in a way that might be a lot less threatening for them. And they might be able to open up in ways that they might not otherwise if you're in a classroom setting, or if you're, on the soccer field or the football field or something like that.
And if you had a chance to, like, what would be like the one thing you would say to somebody? Like, if they're like just like in a off the street or in a meeting or something like this, where you would point out why everything we've talked about the gardening, about the work you do with Health for Use, why is it so important for their community?
It's important because it grounds people more to the needs of their community. It grounds them more into themselves, and it makes them more aware of where they live. And, a lot of people don't really even know their environment. I mean, how many of us during COVID really got a chance to sort of walk around our neighborhoods and see things we never saw before, and meet people we never met before, and see sites we never even envisioned before? And that, COVID was very difficult and very challenging, and very hard for a lot of people. I will say, though, there were quiet moments when people could reflect on where they lived and their surroundings, and it gave them pause to be able to think about it. We're at Health Use, we're doing something called the Lair Prize for Community Wellbeing. We got a grant from PBS and WNYC to be able to do to be able to do what we wanted. But what we decided to do was to create a public health incubator over the summer. It just launched. So if anybody's interested, you can still join. And basically what we're doing is we're allowing people, young people, older people, any people, to create a public health project for their community. It can be anything. It could be a community garden. It could be working in a community garden. It could be building a robot to help people,
Just move
whatever.
stuff. Or
Yeah,
like,
exactly. But one of the reasons we decided to do it, in the midst of COVID, is because there's a lot of needs out there. And people have really started to recognize those needs during COVID, and hopefully that translates over into the post-COVID era. So that's why we're doing it. That's why we decided to do it. And hopefully it will be helpful. But yes, that's what I would say. For that program, it's called the H.E.A.L.T.H Prize for Community Wellbeing. And it's running from late June through early August of 2021. And it's a public health incubator. So anyone who's interested in creating a project in their community whereby they can better the public health of those around them, including themselves, are welcome to participate. It's 1 hour a week where we're doing a seminar for people to sit in on and listen to. And then we have 3 what we're calling public health maker spaces, where you actually get to create your project. And then we will have at the end a final presentation where you present it, and then we will help you if you make it through to the end, which we anticipate everyone will. You will be able to create your project at the end of the session. So we hope to get some more people to sign up, and if anybody's interested, please let me know.